I just did an experiment 2 weeks ago where I posted a video from this very office just using my iPhone, partially as a proof point to my own team of like, we don't need all this other shit. If the stuff's good, people find it interesting and valuable. And if the stuff's not good, we can put as much polish as we want on it. Doesn't matter. And so I would encourage you to think as little as possible about production and as much as possible of the content that's inside of the thing that you're posting. And when you do that, you will probably do a lot better. So with that being said, we're going to do Q's and A's. And so let's A some Q's. Or maybe I'll Q, swap my mic out. Let's swap mics out. All right. Oop. Mic is swapped. All right. Here we go. What do we got, senor? We're gonna do Q's and A's. Can I put this right here?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, put this right here. You want to say hi to Savante? Savante, he's my guy who figured out how to do the live stream because I'm a boomer. Unk, I think Savante's older than I am though. How old are you?
No, you got me by a couple months.
Am I? Dude, I thought black on crack. That's what I was thinking, man. I thought you had me. I thought you were like in your 40s. That's how you carry yourself.
Thank you, I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
it's mature. All right, what do we got?
I operate a not safe for work video content business that has grown via organic content. How can I build my company when I'm not allowed to post ads on normal platforms? How can I hire in this type of business too, without HR risks?
What was the first part?
I operate a not safe for work video content business that has grown.
Okay. So you operated a not safe for work content business, and the difficulty is that you can't post on platforms that type of content. All right, so believe it or not, the solution here is you just build a personal brand that is called adjacent to not safe for work content. So this would probably, I think the technical term, I just learned this, is lewds, not nudes. So basically like content that is, call it provocative, but doesn't show skin. And there's tons of that type of content. But at the end of the day, what people want is they want a character that they find interesting. And what I would encourage you to do is make content about that character, if you're the head of social media for that thing, that basically tells the depth of the story. Honestly, just like anything else, right? And so the fact, actually, in a lot of ways, I think the not safe for work component. So let me give you a different example here. So there's plenty of people who are, famous actresses that they're, like a nude from them would go crazy viral on the internet. That's what TMZ and all these tabloids were kind of dedicated for, right? I was trying to catch them in the wrong moment or catch them on the beach, whatever. And so they have a huge amount of interest in not safe for work content, right? Without having to make not safe for work content. And so it is a fundamental misconception that you need to make the type of thing to get the interest for the thing. And so basically, you just need to do the same thing any other influencer would do, which is make content about the stuff you find interesting, about you, and be interesting. And then as a result, people be more interested in, not safe for work stuff. Yeah, that was racy. I was like, how am I going to answer this in a way that's not provocative? All right, let's do the next one.
At what point should individuals enjoy the fruits of their labor and live the life they work so hard to get to?
So what you ask is a personal question about risk, which is, at what point is it correct to consume? The difficulty or the impossibility of answering that question definitively is because none of us know when we're going to die. And so if you were going to die tomorrow, you would behave differently than if you're going to die in a week, or if you're going to die in a year, or you're going to die in 10 years, right? And since we do not know when we're going to die, we plan differently because the timeline that we have to work with dramatically changes our behavior, right? And so basically it's how much of that do you want to consume today versus tomorrow? And I think to some degree it's how much of your life do you want on consumption versus investment? Like how much am I going to delay gratification in the future versus enjoying gratification today? And I do not think that there's a correct answer to that question because it is entirely a personal thing. Now me personally, I think nirvana is you want to find a way to enjoy the game that you play that also build something for the future. And I think when you do that, then you can in some way serve two masters. All right, let's do another. Let's do another one.
Do you feel like private equity has been a force for good or a force for bad in regards to the life and spending power of the average American consumer?
All right, this is a really interesting question because I think you attempt to make a moral judgment on creation of profit. And so to argue against private equity, in my opinion, is to argue against capitalism. And so if you think that private equity is bad, private equity is also just another term for private ownership. And so do we think that private ownership has been overall good or overall bad? Well, all we have to do is look at places that do not allow private ownership or capitalism, and do we think that people have more good in those societies versus the ones that have more free markets and more capitalism? And the argument for me is pretty stark, black and white, in terms of capitalism is better for people in general in terms of average living conditions. That being said, it does not mean that it is a perfect system. It is an absolutely imperfect and flawed system, and it is also the best one that we have right now. And so I think what people struggle with is that they want to have a perfect world, and because they do not have a perfect world, want to damn the one that they're in. These are some fucking heaters. These are some great preguntas. That's Spanish, by the way, for question. All right, let's go for the next one.
You always talk about learning before earning, building skills and connections before focusing on money. How do I know when I've learned enough and it's time to actually start earning?
So this is another question of delaying gratification. At what point do I have a sufficient amount to start? Now, there's some people who started their first business and they're like, I learned, on starting my business. I think it depends on the opportunity that you're pursuing, and also, God, it's a really good question. I think it depends on the goal. So if you want to be a trillionaire, I think it's a really good question. Finding the right moment. Okay, here we go. I have a better answer for you. It's not about when, it's about the conditions. Okay? And so instead of thinking, I think that I'm going to spend 3 years doing X, Y, and Z to learn, and then at this point in 3 years, I'm going to begin earning, it's more what conditions would have to happen in my external or internal environment that would create the maximum likelihood of success of whatever my next endeavor I plan on pursuing is. And so if I wanted to pursue a smaller endeavor, the likelihood that I would be able to acquire those skills faster goes up. And the next question is, to what degree are the skills that I'm learning going to transfer over to the opportunity that I'm trying to pursue? Meaning, if I want to get into a small social media marketing agency that does lead gen for plumbers, if I work at a small social media marketing agency that does lead gen for plumbers, the likelihood that I'll be able to transfer the skills that I learned in that thing to whatever I want to do next is super high. If I want to then start a SaaS platform from there that doesn't serve agencies and doesn't serve plumbers and doesn't serve me as the customer, the likelihood that you cross over those skills is lower. And so I think the idea is that, and I can't remember what VC firm does this, but I really wholeheartedly believe in it, which is that they only invest in founders that are the customer. Because I think there's something incredibly wise about trying to solve your own problems. Thank you, Svante. There we go. Get the full delt. Let's get the delts in there. There we go. Maybe get some good lighting. I don't know. And so, TLDR, we want to make a list of what skills you think are going to be required to pursue the opportunity, and we want to pursue those in an existing opportunity on someone else's pay, where you get paid to learn. And then once you feel like you have checked off an understanding of the component parts, then you can start. Now, do you need to do that? No. Because the big flex here, what's the fudge factor between what if I have 80% knowledge and 20% that's not? Your figured out factor is going to be your ability to bridge that gap. So you could conceivably, if you have a really strong figure it the fuck out muscle, start with 0 and still figure it the fuck out. The whole discussion here is how do we minimize risk and maximize the likelihood of success? That was a good one. I had to really think through that one. That was a great question. Let's do it.
What are the best businesses to start you've seen with very little upfront capital, and why?
Okay, so big picture, if we think about what types of, when we think, instead of thinking businesses to start, because I think it's very heavy, just think, what shit do I sell? Much easier, all right? So am I gonna sell stuff, physical products? Am I gonna sell pens, right? Am I gonna sell software? Am I gonna sell, which is bits, right? Am I gonna sell service, like work of some kind? And so if I know that these are the different kind of buckets of things that I can sell, then the ones that don't cost money is typically going to be stuff costs money, so we can't do that one. If you need a physical location, that costs money. And so it's going to probably be, you're going to acquire skills and either use those skills to create a digital product, which is either media-based or it's software-based that does something, which you can do that for free or basically free, or you have a skill and you use that skill and sell that skill to other people who don't have that skill. And so when we're thinking about who we target, if you're selling either of those conditions, is that you want to sell to people who either don't know how to do the thing, don't have time to do the thing, or don't have the desire to do the thing. And so those are the three components of who we want to serve. And we want to serve the person who has the most amount of money, who doesn't have the time, knowledge, or desire, so that we can charge the most for what we do. But either way, there's tons of businesses that you can, literally, there's an infinite amount of businesses that you can start that cost no money to start.
I've heard you say that sales is one of the most important skills to learn. How do you measure whether or not you've learned the skill of sales?
Output, baby. Very simple. Output. Can you get people to give you money? That's it. Like, have you gone to strangers and asked them to buy your thing? If they bought your thing, then you have learned how to sell. If a higher percentage of people give you money after you ask them, then you have learned how to sell better than you did before. And so I think a lot of these questions ultimately, like, what I would encourage you to do, and this is a more challenging skill set, is can I boil down my question into math? Is there a way, because oftentimes we discuss these amorphous things, but we're really talking about probabilities. We're talking about percentages, probabilities, how likely is it? And when you talk in those terms, then it's much easier to determine whether it's a good decision or not. And so is my close rate of getting people to buy my thing low? Then I probably need to increase my skill set. How do we increase our skill set? Find people who've done it well so you can see the behavior that is good modeled for you. And then also role play, AKA practice, doing the correct behavior. The third element, which I'd say if you have the ability to do it, have somebody who understands the correct model and can give you feedback in real time on your own behavior, which will then speed up the loop, which is fundamentally why every sports team has coaches and trainers and all that kind of stuff. Good one though. These are good. Y'all are heating up today. You guys are cooking with gas, as the kids say. All right, what's the next one?
I'm a tech founder. How would you go about finding ideas in the current economy if you do not have a product yet?
So, really good question. Start with the customer. Don't start with the product. Figure out what someone wants, and then go try and solve that. And there's a number of different ways to solve it. And there's a great book not by Elon, but about Elon's process called The Algorithm. I'm getting my whole team, or I think most of my team already has read it. It's a 4-hour audiobook. You can consume it in 2 hours. So think about it as like a 2-hour podcast. But the premise is very simple. There's 5 steps. I'm not going to break them down. But what you want to do is think, how do I solve this problem in the absolute most efficient manner possible? And then do that entire process manually. And then once you've done it manually, over time, you will be able to simplify and automate different steps of it so you can increase your margin and increase the effectiveness of the solution you have for a specific customer. And so instead of like, and this is why I think the question of like, what business should I start? Go one level deeper, which is what thing should I sell? Which one level deeper is what customer problem do I want to solve? And once you figure out the problem you want to solve, then figuring out what product or way that you want to solve it is much easier. And I'll give you one more kind of like filter for this. The reason that so many of you have trouble figuring out what business to start is because you're trying to pick from infinity. Your mind needs constraints. And so said differently, if you've heard of the jam experiment, so they had 2 different supermarkets, they had 24 types of jam out, and they had free samples, and then they asked people to buy a jam. And then they had a different table at a different supermarket, that same supermarket, that only had, I think, 3 jars or 6 jars of jam. And the 3 or 6 jar of jam table, the much lower amount, sold far more jars of jam. So why is that? So it's the paradox of choice, which is the more choices we have, the more difficult it is to make a choice, and the more likely we think that it is that we're going to regret the choice we made, and we're also going to second guess the choice, right? We're going to think, wait, maybe I should have done something else, right? And so the reason that I think Steve Jobs started the first iPods as black and white is because he understood this basic psychology, and I think they made mistakes by having all these different colors, which I think over time they trimmed back down. And so we approach the problem of creating a business the same way, which is if you had 2 businesses to pick from, it'd be easy for you to pick one or the other. And so with that, you'd be like, I'll walk you through the experiment. Look at 2 businesses, doesn't matter what they are. Look around the room, look around as you're driving, here's 2 businesses. Which of those 2 businesses would you rather do? Once you answer the question, because you'll be able to pick that pretty easily, the next question is why? And so once you have the why, then that starts to give you your own preferences of what you're really looking for. Do you want in person? Do you want remote? Do you want a digital business? Do you want a service business? Do you want physical products? Do you want to work 5 days a week? Do you want to work 7 days a week? Do you want to work 2 days a week? Do you want to work only in the mornings? Do you want to have a big team? Do you want a small team? There are a lot of questions that you'd be able to answer That if you answer that, then very quickly you just narrow down the universe, and so all of a sudden at the very end you might have 2 or 3 options to pick from rather than infinite. And then you'll actually be able to make a choice. And you'll feel confident about the choice because you understood the filters that you put in line in order to make the decision. So hopefully that helps. Unconstrained thinking, very hard to do. Let's do another.
Hey Alex, 22, from Kazakhstan. For 2 years, I've relied on anger, energy drinks, sugar, and heavy metal to stay
My man.
productive. It got results. It's hurting my health. How do I build natural discipline?
Well, all right. I'm like, all right, let's cool the jets here for a moment. Like, you drinking energy drinks, okay, so you're drinking calorie-free energy drinks that have caffeine. So basically, you're drinking caffeine. All right, well, as long as it doesn't interfere with your sleep and you do it before, 9 or noon, you're probably okay there. I think you said nicotine. Nicotine, there's people kind of split on. I'm a big nicotine user. I'm not saying you should. But there's a bunch of benefits that people have had. And I started using it before it was cool. On top of that, I think it helps with my ADD. Beyond that, I think you just have to look at like your health stuff. As in like, you need to sleep well. And if you sleep well, then that's going to be like the 80-20. Like sleep well, work out, don't eat crap. If you use some stimulants in order to be stimulated and it doesn't interfere with your sleep or other components at work, I think you're all right, man. I think a lot of it is just judging like somehow you have labeled your current activity as bad. And I would kind of say like, according to whom? Like what are we defining healthy as? Like if you can define healthy, then you can define a level of work that does not interfere with that definition. And there's plenty of people that I know that work incredibly hard that are also extremely healthy. Brian Johnson, for example, the healthiest man alive, he works all the time, but he's incredibly healthy. Now, some people say, well, I don't want his lifestyle. Fine, but he has dedicated his lifestyle to health. And so like, I think a lot of it is like, I actually don't even know. I think you were just judging yourself for doing something and say, why can't I do it when it is harder? I think you've aligned your conditions to increase the likelihood that you take the action that is desired, and that is a good thing. So do more of that, as long as it doesn't interfere with other goals you have. Another
Question. I'm a wedding photographer, bad at delegating photo editing. Tried before, hated results. Redid almost all. How can I learn to trust the people I hire, such as editors?
Okay, so first let's just define trust. So trust is basically you have a history of positive reinforcement with a person. So for example, and we started this whole thing with that, if you got something and then did a good job with it, I would trust you more than if somebody hasn't gotten anything or got something and a bad thing happened, right? And so if what you're asking for is how do I trust someone, which is how do I give them the opportunity to earn my trust, meaning how do I give them the opportunity to do a good thing? So we want to maximize the likelihood of success. And so it's most likely that you've been giving people tasks with a very small likelihood of success because you haven't maximized the conditions around them so that they could win, so that you could feel good about yourself, so that you could say that somehow only you can do it because you are a special snowflake. But I promise you, you are not a special snowflake because you learned everything you learned as a human, which means other people can learn it too. And if you are good at teaching, you can teach them that skill as well, and you can maximize the environment around them to increase the likelihood that they're also going to be successful too. And so this means that you need to train better and you need to train more robustly, and likely you are explaining and not giving them trial attempts. Meaning you need to say, if this, then that. So do this thing and then have this outcome happen, and then giving them feedback in real time. If you give feedback to people enough times, they will understand how to do it, and then you will trust them more because you have evidence that they can do it. And so I think if I were to translate what you asked into what I think actually is happening is, how do I get people to do exactly what I want without giving them any instructions? And the answer there is you don't. You're asking them to guess and then somehow get it right. I think that was the issue. Hope that helped. Another.
Do you feel like private equity has been...
You often discuss how our actions come from our environments, but you also discuss the value of reframes. How do you decide when to use reframes versus environmental factors to influence your behavior?
Why not do both? Like, I want to win. I don't really care whether it's because I have magic crystals in my pocket or I'm in synchronicity with the universe, or because I'm vibrating at a higher frequency, or because I removed everything in the room and only had a keyboard and a screen, which made working the keyboard and the screen the most likely action that I had. And so at the end of the day, like, why do we care? I think you should just do whatever maximizes the likelihood of success. I don't really pick at all. I think some things are more emotive, meaning more emotional. And I think in those situations, I think reframes tend to be easier to employ. Basically, it's like a reframe can help you once you have an emotional outburst that's internal. Whereas I would think about environment more as how can I change the likelihood of me taking an action. So if I've already tripwired, I'm a little angry, I'm a little frustrated or something, it's like how can I reframe this? Versus how do I make sure that I show up every day to the gym? Different. But use them both.
Hey Alex, I've had a web design agency for 5 years, but AI websites are killing my business. Should I do another business?
This is so interesting. I had a guy who came out here and asked this exact same question. And he said that he had a fear that AI companies were going to destroy his business. And yet, when I asked him, how much are you using AI in building your websites? The answer was, we're not. And so the thing is there's always a bell curve in terms of adoption. And if you are losing sales because of people using AI to build their sites, then that is one thing. But I think there's a more likely scenario, which is that you just don't know how to get customers and you're blaming AI for it. But there's plenty of people with money that don't know how to use AI, which has only increased your leverage in terms of your ability to create really valuable stuff for not a lot of time, which I think means that you actually, there's still, in some ways, there's more opportunity now than there was before.
If your real name contains sounds that most English speakers can't pronounce correctly, would you keep your real name for your personal brand or adopt an easier name? Why?
I think it's up to you. I think it's a good question. I met a guy literally yesterday who did this exact thing. He was an Indian guy who had a really long, hard Indian last name, and then he just changed his last name legally to the nature of the work that he did. So imagine it was like Alex Carpenter. Wait a second. Alex Smith. Alex. Wait a second. People used to do this. They used to change their name to what they actually did for a living. Alex Gardner? No. Yeah, this is old as time. So if you want to change your name to something that you think is more associated with the brand that you want to have, people have done it for hundreds of years. And if you want to keep your own name because you're like, this is really special to me, then do it. Like, it's your name. It's whatever you feel cool with. I don't think there's a right answer there at all. That was an interesting one. History lesson. That was fun. Ooh, let's cook, shall we? Shall we cook some more with some more gas? Another.
I know you say don't switch businesses every time it gets hard, but how do you know if you're just hitting a wall you need to push through, or if the business itself is just not going to work out?
All right. If another business of the same kind exists and is much bigger and more successful than yours, then you simply do not have the skills yet to make it work. It does not mean that this business is impossible or can't be done. The only time, and this is a small minority of circumstances, where it makes sense to pivot, like change the nature of the business, is where something has never been done before and you're trying to be the first one to do it and you don't know if people actually want the thing. But if you're like, hey, I have a dry cleaning store and should I push or should I pivot? Well, dude, if you want to do dry cleaning, there's plenty of successful dry cleaners. You want to do laundry, there's plenty of successful laundry. You want to do HVAC, there's tons of successful HVAC. You want to do garage doors, there's tons of successful garage door people. And so, like, I will almost always first look around and say, is there anybody who's doing a version of this business that's doing well? If the answer is yes, then what are they doing that I'm not doing? And then I just try and reconcile the differences between their actions and mine. And so my first step is always to replicate before I iterate. Now, to be clear, if you want to create a one of zero company that's never been done before, then you also incur the risk of you might not have product market fit, which is that we don't know if people actually want this thing. But if you're going into a market that already exists and saying like, hey, I want to help people lose weight, that market exists, right? And you're like, I want to do it in a different way. I want to do it online with coaching. Okay, well, yeah, that exists. I want to do it with supplements. That exists. I want to do it with peptides. That exists. I want to do it with, MedSpot or Cool Sculpting. Like there's 100 different, I want to do it with ashwagandha group. I don't really care. There's a zillion ways that you can do it and are already proven. And so I would say for 99% of you guys, it is just, you do need to push more. And the pushing part is doing the repetitions with a feedback loop so that you iterate your way to success. And so the key is not to do 1,000 of the same thing, is to do 1,000 iterations. So that by the time you do your 1,000th iteration, it is now good. You suck in the beginning and you want to suck less over time, not do a shitty thing 100 times in a row and say, why didn't it work?
For someone who stutters,
My name is
but
Evan.
wants
What's happening there? You guys try to double time me. I see that. By the way, we're experimenting with something new because we thought it'd be more engaging rather than me just squinting at the screen trying to read these the comments fast enough. My team's pulling out the great questions and then just having them read with AI. Kind of cool. All right, shoot.
Hi, what advice do you have for someone who stutters but wants to start a business? Because it's hard to talk to people and close sales.
Really interesting. Well, couple different scenarios here. So one is there's plenty of businesses that don't require a talking person to make money. So there's e-commerce, there's digital businesses, all those things you can do without being the person who's actually doing the selling. Option one. Option two, you can hire somebody who can do the sales for you. Option three is you can practice to try and get rid of the stutter. I'm not saying possible. I'm a stage 5 stutterer. I don't know how it works, but it is not an impossibility. If what you're asking for is permission to keep trying because it is hard, then think about how amazing the story will be when you actually succeed. And then you'll be able to say like, dude, I was able to sell people with a stutter. So if you think like you're worried, like I couldn't even get the S's out, right? And so and maybe you don't sell stuff that begins with S. Pro tip.
Your content is so valuable to watch. How would I go about finding a mentor to help me on my path?
Well, I think we can delineate a couple things. So first is there are people who give you information. So think about the sources of truth or sources of information. All that stuff's readily available on the internet for free. I think what you're asking for is someone who can give you feedback, right? So someone who can train you in some way, either one-to-many or one-on-one, that basically you can take an action and they can say, change this, try it again. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can hire vendors for that. You can hire, a vendor or mentor, whatever you want to call it. There's coaches for that. There's sales coaches. There's insurance sales coaches. There's I'm a big advocate of getting training. I'm an advocate of trying to hire an expert who is good at the thing to give me feedback so that I can shorten my curve to get to where I want to go. And I think there's a couple perspectives on this, which is that some people with egos hate the idea that they want to pay for help. I think that's silly, but that's up to you. I don't want to have to figure everything out. I would happily take the answers from someone else. This is not school. You can pay someone for the answers to the test and then just take the test and ace it. And so I like that. The other perspective is that sometimes you pay someone and you didn't get what you wanted out of it. And there's probably 3 core problems that could have happened from that. So number one is they promised something that was too big, right? That's on them. The second is that you did not do the work, right? So that's on you. Or you had unrealistic expectations that were independent of their promises. And so in either of those scenarios, you're going to be dissatisfied. And so I would say that when I pay anyone for help, I always make it my objective to make sure that it is not my fault. And so I do that by promising the person, and I say it as I will be your best student. That because there is no way, I will follow this to the T and I will do more just in case. Because I want to rule out any possibility of failure on me and I will expect nothing. And so when you approach education that way, the likelihood of success is really high. And I would say that I've been probably the #1 student in anything that I've paid for, which is a pretty bold claim, but I think it's true. And the approach that I've had is just absolute violence. Is that I will be religious in my adherence to the steps that they outline. And I think what makes one person successful in a program compared to another person is the other skills that they have that the person who selected did not qualify. So what does that mean? So let's imagine that to start a program of any kind, you need to know how to read and you need to know how to write. Well, if you've never read before, you might get accepted into a program, but then reading is a requisite, which means the likelihood that you succeed is low. But they didn't include it because they thought it was implied. Now, there are skills that are like reading and writing that are more nuanced, that people who teach and are not as competent at teaching do not know how to select for. And so in so doing, they sell people, and sometimes people win, and sometimes they don't. Now, over time, and I've heard this story 100 times and so have you, which is I bought 4 courses and then on the 5th course I made all this money. But the thing is that each of the other courses still gave you skills. You just didn't have all of the skills to create the outcome. And so let's say there's 20 skills. The first one taught you 4, the next one taught you 4, the next one taught you 4, and the last one taught you the last 4 that you needed, and all of a sudden you made $1. So you attribute all of your success to the guy who gets you the outcome, but each of the other things that you went through still contributed to it. It just wasn't enough to get you off across the finish line. And so this is why I have a tremendous respect for teaching in general, because I understand the difficulty of getting someone across the line. But I also think that there's just as much responsibility on the student's sake of like, how bad do you want it? And do you just want to have an excuse to prove that you're right, woe is you, the universe is out to get you, no, there's no way to be successful? Like, sometimes people set up games where if they win the prize, they lose. And I would encourage you to not play those games. Heating up. We're getting spicy today. Spicy Tuesday, Taco Tuesdays. Is it Taco Tuesdays? We should start doing taquito. Well, taquito too. I haven't done any Spanish today. I'm gonna get a little Spanish. Let's do otra pregunta, por favor. That's other question, please. Another. Otro.
Hi, Alex. My name is Everest. I'm 26, and I've been running a tutoring studio for the last year, but I'm stuck getting into dollar per hour battles. How would you craft a non-dollar per hour offer for this niche?
I'm gonna smoke this. Sell to goal. Sell to goal. All right. So I will say this until I die. Sell to goal. Said differently. If I have a lady who's in front of me and she wants to lose weight, I'm like, you're 180. You want to be 150. You want to lose 30 pounds. I think it's going to take us 30 weeks. And so our weeks are whatever, $100 a week times 30, $3,000. So sign here. You lose your 30 pounds. And if you don't, I'll keep working with you until you do. Bingo, bango. Now, in this instance, in a tutoring situation, right? Well, what if they don't do the homework? Well, then why don't we make it contingent on them doing the homework? What if they don't X, right? And so here's the thing. If you sell to goal, think about what are the requirements or what amount of volume or what amount of actions would be required that would make it unreasonable for this person not be successful. So, said differently, when I was trying to ace the GMAT, which is the kind of like the SAT for business school, I found this study when I was trying to figure out the most effective study habits for doing the GMAT, and had this big meta-analysis that basically just proved of all the different study methods, there was a direct one-to-one correlation with the number of problems solved and your score. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, done. I'll just fucking do all the problems in every book. And that's what I did. And I aced it and I got above Harvard's GMAT score. And so, and to be clear, I didn't start there. I gained like 200 points or whatever on my GMAT score just by, I saw that one graph. And what's interesting is that there are so many, because there was this lie that we were told, which is that like, it's a measure of intelligence. It is not a measure of intelligence. A test is a measure of your ability to take a test, which is a skill like anything else. And so you should learn how to take tests if you're gonna be measured generically on your test-taking ability. Duh. So back to the tutor. If we know that we want someone to get an A, and let's say they're at a B level or a C level, we say, what activity would be required in order for them to get that? And then you sell to goal. Now, the person is gonna say, wait a second, you're gonna charge me 5 times more than somebody else will. I'm like, right, what they're gonna do is they're gonna say, I'm gonna spend an hour a week with your kid, and then I'm gonna give them homework, which they're not gonna do, and then in 12 weeks or 12 hours, right, of $100 an hour, you're gonna be dissatisfied. If you work with me, we're gonna do way more work with your kid, but I'm going to force feed the success through them, and I will drag their ass across the finish line because they will have no choice but to succeed unless they literally get to the test and then choose not to win. But they will do the problems in front of me. And if it takes a smart kid 100 problems and a dumb kid 300 problems to learn, because rate of learning, intelligence, we just gotta do more. And so there is a certain volume of work that will make it unreasonable. And so here's what gets more interesting. We can select how much work someone we think is going to have to do based on their initial assessment. That's why we do assessments. So if the girl who wants to lose weight is 175 pounds and wants to get to 170, there's less work to do. If they want to get from 175 pounds to 130, there's more work to do. If you've got a 200 GMAT and you want to get to a 700, a lot of work to do. If you're at a 650 and want to get to 700, a lot less work to do. And so we have to gauge the gap between where they are and what they want, and then how much work would it take for it to be unreasonable for them not to do it, and then we sell to goal, period. And you make the work conditional on the guarantee. Bingo, bango. All right, Let's do it. Next. Además. Otro.
I run my parents' business but own 0%. I want to scale it but don't want to build something I don't own. How would you approach getting equity?
Ask, bro. Like, how do you think you're going to start a business of your own if you can't ask people? Right? Just ask them. Say, hey, like one of my biggest frame for having hard conversations is tell the complete truth. So the same way you're asking this question to me, ask that to your parents. Hey, I really want to scale this business, but I don't want to scale a business that I don't own no equity in. How do you think, or my favorite question, what would it take for me to eventually own half or me to eventually own 100%? And now you can have a conversation. And then they will name a price, meaning what it would take. And then you get to determine, because what it takes assumes success. It assumes accomplishment of whatever you want, and then reverse engineers a price tag, which then you can choose to say, is this reasonable for me or not? If they come back and say, well, we've always wanted you to own the business, and I think that if you work in it for the next 10 years, we'll give you 10% a year for the next 10 years, then you're like, either that price is worth it to you or not. Now you might say, well, and you have to make that calculus for yourself. Do I think in that same 10 years, I could build a business of greater capacity without having to get their permission to do all the things that I want to do? If that's true, then prove it. And if it's not true, then don't complain. But either way, they will state a price, and then you will pick whether you want to make the bet or not. But just state the facts and tell the truth, and say that to them. Like I'm telling you, the best thing to do is ask the hard, real question that you would ask me to them. I've got this employee who's been showing up late, and they're taking all these coffee breaks, and I don't know if they're doing anything. Say that to them. Hey, you've been showing up late, and you've been taking all these coffee breaks, and I don't know if you're doing anything. Help me. Help me understand what you're doing so that I don't have to ask these thoughts. Just say what you're going to say. When you talk shit behind someone's back, tell them. Just remove the insults. Just state the facts. Whew, we're cooking today. I'm feeling it.
This is going to be a good one.
Oh, it's a heater? All right, we got a heater coming.
Mr. Moza, if I know we're just apes on a small floating rock in the middle of the universe and nothing really matters, are morals, good and bad, even real?
I mean, I think you ask a philosophical question, obviously. I think that if you believe that there is nothing, then you would make the argument that there are no morals from an objective capital M perspective. Now, there are absolutely rules of behaving in society that will increase the likelihood of reward and punishment as you live as a human being. And so as much as we can say, and this is why I think there's low utility in the question, it's one of these things where, like, introspection is a modern invention, right? Like, if you look at, way long ago, right? Like, there weren't therapists until like 100 years ago. And so we struggle with these types of questions because we have too much time. We don't have to worry about food, we don't have to worry about shelter, and so we plague our minds with things that don't really matter. And so even though we might make the argument that none of it matters, neither does the question. And so then the question is, what is the relative utility that I'm going to get from answering this? And so unless it changes something about your behavior in a meaningful way, then it's really not worth wasting the revolutions on. And so I think there is a real case for productive questions. Does the answer to this question, is it going to change my life in some way? And so for many of you, because some of you guys are, forgive my French, assholes, you ask questions and then there's always more questions, right? And you get the answer, but then it changes nothing about your behavior, which actually means that you ask questions as a form of procrastination and use the answers as a form of entertainment. Fuck. Real. And so we should only ask questions where the answers will change our behavior. And so for the individual who asked this question, are you realistically going to go, because people strawman this and say, well, if there's no good and evil, then I'm going to go around, mogging the streets and lighting things on fire. It's like, yeah, and you will be stopped in short order with men with guns. And they will win. And so it will be short-lived. And is that really worth it? Probably not. And so what are we asking about? Will it change anything for you? Probably not, because you're probably not going to take this question and do anything with it. And so for those types of questions, I kind of just keep living my life and move on. Hope that helped. All right, let us begin cooking with more gas.
Hey, Alex, I need your advice desperately.
Ooh.
18, medical school. Don't feel like I belong here. Magnetized towards entrepreneurship.
Okay, then leave, dude. I thought there was a question coming. Leave. Leave. So I'll ask the question that you're not really asking, which is you're afraid of leaving because someone who's not you will make you feel bad for it. Because if it were only up to you, then you would leave. So it means that there are other people's rewards or punishments that are basically acting as tipping the scale on your behavior. And so my way of when I have something that I want and I am not doing it, I ask myself, who is influencing my behavior in a way that's aversive to my goals? And so what's really interesting is that when you feel like you feel this tension where you're like, I have conflicting priorities, right? It's very normal, right? I want to be really healthy. I also want to be a great dad. I also want to be a great spouse. I also want to be good for a community. I also want to be good for the environment. I also want to work on my personal growth, right? And I have to do all of that in 12 hours, right? Or whatever, however many hours you're awake. Well, they're conflicting priorities. I want to do right by me. I want to do right by my siblings. I want to do right by my parents. I want to do right by my friends. And they want different things. And so at some point, you have to decide a priority of reinforcers, meaning you might decide that your family means more to you than your business, and that is okay. And you might decide that what you think about you means more than what your parents think about you. If you can get what you think about you and what your parents think about you to be aligned, you won't have any hesitation. But when there's conflict, one of them has to win. And I would encourage you to do the one who's going to be with you the longest, which is you. Felt that one. Felt that one. Shall we cook with coal instead this time? Let us cook with coal. Bad for the environment, but it's okay. No coal was made or heated or cooked in the making of this answer. All right, let's go.
Alex, how do I convince rich clients to hire me when my case studies are all from lower-end small businesses?
Bruh. Great question. So I'll give you a tactical answer, which is you just basically need to decrease the risk for them. And so people don't buy because of risk, period. That is why they don't buy. And so they either buy because they don't buy because of price, they don't buy because of risk, they don't buy because of work, right? It's one of these things. So it's either you're asking too much of them in terms of what they got to do, you're asking them to take too much risk in terms of the outcome, which is going to be relative to the price. So what we can do is we can sync the price to 0. Okay, I'll do it for free. We can sync the work down to 0. I'll do it all for you. And so then the only risk that they have is that the outcome won't happen, which we've tried to reverse as much of the risk as humanly possible. The way that the person who did my clips when I started doing shorts got me, I think I was like his first account or second, like not a lot, right? The way he did it was he just said, hey, I already see all this YouTube video that you got. I will clip them into shorts. You don't have to do anything. Don't pay me. Please just let me get permission to post, and in the meantime, if you don't want to give me permission, I will send you the clips and then you can post them yourself. And I was like, okay, man. Like, if you want to go make some videos and send them to me, and I'll take a look at them, and if I like them, I'll post them. And that is how it started. And so he punched way above his weight class because he made a truly risk-free offer for me. And then as he made more and more clips and they were good, I said, I'll give you posting permission so that you can post from the stuff that I had. And then as those did better, he was like, you know what, if you actually made some shorts yourself rather than me repurposing stuff, it would do even better. And so then one day a quarter, he flew out and we'd record 100 shorts in a day. And then that became the next 90 days of content or whatever. That's how we did it. And so every little bit that I gave him, he did well with, right? And so, you know, to whom much is given, much is expected. And also to the same degree, if you steward someone with a little bit and they multiply it, you give them more, right? And so he did a lot with the little that I gave him. And so I kept giving him more and he kept multiplying it. And so you just want to get a shot. And so I think the big mistake that people are making, you specifically in trying to get these richer customers, is you're trying to have them take all this risk on, right? You're like, I want you to pay me all this money, I want you to do all this work, and I want you to take all the risk that it's not gonna happen. Well, that's ridiculous. Now, once you have enough case studies, once you have enough proof, then you can say, listen, I have no doubt that I can help you. I have a track record. And when you have a track record, then you can charge the premium prices. Boom. This is fun. This is good. We should do this again sometime. We should do this tomorrow. I won't be able to do it tomorrow. I have an event tomorrow. But so just soak it up. Next one.
Hi, Alex. I've tried a few things and failed, and now I'm honestly scared to start again. How do you know when to keep trying versus when you're just repeating the same mistakes?
Well, I think the last part of your question is actually the most important one, which is, are you repeating the same mistakes? Or are you generalizing trying a business in general as a mistake? So what we want, like one of the hardest parts about making mistakes is we have to learn the correct lesson from the error. So said differently, if I hire a salesperson and the salesperson doesn't work out, do I learn the lesson that salespeople don't work? Do I learn the lesson that all employees suck? Or do I learn the lesson that I do not know how to pick, hire, manage, train, and maintain a productive salesperson? If you extrapolated either of the first two lessons, then you probably learned the incorrect lesson from the actions you took or the error that you made. If you take the third solution, which is that I do not know how to X, Y, Z that creates this outcome, that is something that is under your control. And so fundamentally, then it comes down to how to learn how to do that. It's like, well, you watch videos, you can hire help, you can have people tutor you. There's a lot of different ways you can learn stuff. But I think being very clear about what is missing in your business, because when people are telling me that like my business didn't work, it's so interesting because like all businesses, like if you've seen a future version of the business that you have or somebody else who has the exact same business as you, then we already know the business works. So it just means they're doing stuff that you're not doing. So let's figure out what they're doing and then go do that. And again, we replicate before we iterate. So don't get cute and try and make it unique until you've at least duplicated another person's level of success. At that point, you have now earned the right to say, now I can be cute. Now I can try something because I've done enough iterations that I think this might work a little bit better. And you'll be right or wrong. And if you're right, you'll make more money than them. And if you're wrong, you'll go backwards. And then you go back to doing what you did before. And that's the game. And you basically keep doing that step until you die. All right, 1492. Columbus sailed the open blue. That's what we got live. We cooking. All right, next one.
Hey Alex, I'm 16 years old, and can you please tell me how I could go from 0 to million by 18 years old so I could prove to my family I don't need to go to college?
Yes. Reverse engineer what a million means. So is it a million in revenue? Is it a million in profit? Is it a million over the 2 years? Is it a million in profit over 2 years? Just a million in revenue? So number one, quantify the goal really discreetly. So let's just say that by the end of 24 months from now, you want to exit velocity, meaning your monthly revenue run rate is $83,000 a month. All right, so that would put you on pace for $1 million. Okay, so if that's the goal, then we have to sell enough units per month that it equates to $83,000 a month. And so let's say that you want to sell $2,000 a month thing to business owners to help them get leads. So let's say you run meta ads, or you clip content for them, or you manage their Reddit, reputation online. Pick something, and say, okay, if I have to get to $83,000 a month, let's just call it 84. Keep it nice and simple math-wise. I've got $2,000 a month per customer. Then I need 42 customers in order to get my $83,000 a month. Okay. In order for me to get 43 customers, what do I think my churn on that subscription is going to be? Let's assume it's small business owners. If it's a small business owner, I'll tell you the rule of thumb is probably going to be about 5 months is going to be the expected lifetime. So call it 20% churn. Again, I'm not saying these are good numbers. I'm saying that's what it's probably going to be. So that means that you have 5 months of 2K. That's $10,000 total in lifetime value for a customer. And so your sales velocity, which means how many people you need to sell per month, has to equate to $10,000 time, or rather $84,000 divided by the LTV of the customer. So if I have 84,000 divided by 10, then I need to sell 8.4 units per month, which is 2 per week. If we want to round up, we can say 3 per week. And so then we say, okay, if we have to sell 3 units per week at that price point, how many outreach attempts does it take me to get an appointment? And we'd say maybe let's say it's 100 outreach attempts to get an appointment. That would be pretty high, but let's just say it's 100 to get one. Okay, of my opportunities, how many of them do I close? I close 1 out of 4 opportunities, okay? Which means I need to do 400 to get one of those sales, and I need 3. So I need 1,200 outreach attempts per week in order to get my goal. And so if I have 1,200 outreach attempts per week, and I've got 6 days that I'm gonna be working, let's say you take Sunday off, then you can do 200 outreach attempts per day, and then you wait. That's the game. And so I think many of you have these goals, but you have not actually broken down what does it take from a numbers perspective and keep going down to from the number to my daily activity. That's it. You just have to connect what you do to this number, and then it's just math. Rock and roll.
How to do the things you know you should do. I am struggling with discipline. Oh no.
That was the most flaccid side off. Oh no. What? You didn't have enough discipline to finish the question. So I'm going to guess the question because you didn't have enough discipline to actually say it. Bro, just align the environment to make doing the right thing the easiest thing. And so if you want to not drink, don't go to the bar. If you want to not scroll on Instagram, then get an app or delete the apps that you have from your phone entirely that you're distracting yourself with. And so like the key to being focused is to remove all distractions, not to use more willpower. Willpower doesn't work. Willpower is a myth. Not really a myth, but like just for the purpose of what we're saying, don't worry about that. Try to not use your willpower and still win anyways. And so like the thing is if you want to win no matter what, we have to make the right choice the easiest choice, because you're going to have, because willpower does actually diminish over time. That's why you make bad decisions at the end of the day, not at the beginning of the day, right? We're freshest in the beginning, not at the end. When we're decision fatigued, beat up, right? We make mistakes. And so the idea is, well, if I have to win in all environments, then I need to, under duress, under fatigue, still be able to perform. And so in that condition, how do I maximize my likelihood of success, which is remove everything else that's an option at that moment. And so you have to basically make your life boring so that the work becomes interesting. For that period. And that period can be defined as the hours you work. It can be for that season of your life or for the work year, and then you take off during the summer, whatever. But during the constraints of when you want to achieve the thing, you remove everything that is not the thing, and then the thing becomes the most important thing that you have in front of you. Interesting, right? That was a good one. All right, let's do it. Another.
One of my employees asked for a $25,000 raise from $100,000 salary. However, he hasn't added enough value. How would you structure his comp growth plan to $125,000 without making him feeling bad?
Oh, I think that you have some beliefs that we need to break. So if someone asks you for more money, you can say no. But you just say no and explain why, and I think more importantly, explain how to get even more. So you said you wanted 125. I want to give you 150. The issue is that I need you to make the 150. Is that feeling reasonable? Yes. Okay. And so what you're currently doing is yielding this amount of money. And in order for the business to maintain profitability so we can continue to grow, so that you can have career growth and a trajectory in a much larger business, because that's what the future version of this business is bigger than it currently is, we need to basically align what you do to increasing more revenue. Now, what I think is very valuable is that a lot of people who ask that, they watch a TikTok and it says, go ask your boss for more money. Sometimes they should ask for more money because maybe they are being underpaid. But a lot of times, maybe they're being appropriately paid. Maybe they're being overly paid, right? But what we have to break down is tying what they do to how the business yields business outcomes. How does what you do make the business money? And if they can describe how their activities generate the business money, by the way, huge value add. By the way, if you guys don't know how what you do makes the business that you work in's money, you will not make as much money as you could if you did understand how it worked. Because then you can describe, when I do this, churn goes down, which means LTV goes up. And if LTV goes up, we make more per customer. If we make more per customer, the business nets more without having to acquire more. Great. If you can just articulate that, which is, by the way, we're learning the language of business. That's what I'm asking you to do. And so you need to give the person or tell the person the skills that they need and what activities they must do, that if they do those activities, these outcomes would happen. And if these outcomes happen, then their request is reasonable, right? Or beyond reasonable. You'd happy to pay it. Because every business owner, and I would start with this frame, which is that every business owner will always pay for a fraction of future earnings that they have not had. What they will be reluctant to do is give a percentage of money that they're already making for work that did not contribute to it. All right. Otra.
I care a lot about my long-term girlfriend. My stats go down when with her. She is cheerleader and wants same life and very smart. Should we try business partner route or break it off? I'm so 50-50.
Tough. Really tough. Because you have conflicting priorities. So what that means is you have multiple things that you want, and in wanting those things, they are interfering with each other, which means that you have two options. Option one is that you can deem one of those two things, business or cheerleader girlfriend, the priority, and you say, I know that my stats are lower with her, and I am okay with that trade because I value her more than the business outcome. Option one. Option two, I value my business outcome more than I value my relationship with her, and so I will cease having a relationship with her in the hopes that I will find somebody else who I can have a good relationship with and get the business outcome. And so the idea is that it's a question of and or. It doesn't need to be or. And so what I would before you do this though, because let's say you're in the second scenario, because the first scenario is easy. You just say that your business goals aren't important to you. In the second scenario, before breaking up, what I would encourage you to do is very specifically say what you do in these situations decreases the odds of my success and the lifestyle that you have told me that you want. And so I'm having a lot of difficulty serving two masters. I want to be a good boyfriend to you based on your requirements, and I need to be a good business owner based on the market's requirements. Now, the market's requirements are not negotiable. Yours are. And so is there a world, what would it take for me to be able to do this in the business? In that environment, under those conditions, would you still like our relationship and want to continue to date me? If you can establish that up front, these are the rules of engagement. I'm going to work uninterrupted for 10 hours a day, and I'm going to work 6 days a week. That being said, outside of those business hours, I'll be fully dedicated to you and you'll have my full and undivided attention. If that works, bingo bango, we got them both. And sometimes there's actually a very strong argument for that. It's like you can actually check out, fully switch gears, and I think that's great for the people who can do that. Like I've seen tons of very successful business people who have that type of dynamic. But I think that what you need to have is very clear expectations and boundaries around what her requirements are to have a good relationship, and then what is required by your definition in this season for your business to be successful, and making sure that those her requirements and the requirements of the business ideally do not conflict. If they do conflict, you have to pick one that's more important. Fun. All right. Otra.
What would you say to a bunch of kids who want to start a marketing agency together? 8 people in total, no SOP, just an idea and desire. Not sure who will be there till the end.
Tell me you have a terrible idea without telling me you have a terrible idea. If you're just like, we're 8 buds and we're going to start this thing together, and you haven't thought about what your skills are, and you already know that some of you guys aren't going to be there until the end, I think we have to ask the question of like why we're doing this to begin with. If you are like, man, I just want to do something with my friends, then like go play video games, like go to amusement parks, go drink beer, like go do friend shit. But I promise you, the relationship gets far more complex when you introduce money, and you likely won't have those friends for a very long time, and you will permanently lose the friends because when money gets involved, the likelihood that you lose the friendship goes up dramatically. Because all of a sudden somebody is getting paid on something that they didn't deserve, and that can be very tough. And so fundamentally, when we're looking at business partnership, we want to see, does the person have skills that I don't have? Do they have money that I don't have? Do they have time that I don't have? And so we want to make sure that the people that are around you that are going to be your partner contribute their share towards the outcome. And those are going to be the 3 normal ways that someone is going to pay into the partnership to yield out a contribution. Now, is it going to be perfect? No. And in the future, if it has to be reconciled, you want to get it as close as close to ideal as you can. Some people develop more skills and become more important, and that's just the nature of things. But I think that having kind of like 8 equal partners or something like that is probably a pretty bad idea, because the likelihood that you guys have truly complementary skills or different time requirements or different capital requirements is probably low. And so I would think that this is probably not going to work long term. That being said, if you want to like get together and do a moving company for the summer or an agency for the summer, that's fine. I would just say that this is a project that we're going to end at the end of this period of time. Then we're going to renegotiate based on who we think is actually going to do this. There you go. All right. Let's get a spicy one. Let's get something interesting. Let's get something that with a little stirring of the pot, shall we?
In continuation of the discipline question, what if you can't eliminate distractions? For example, you need internet access to work, but then I just end up watching YouTube. Oh no!
What? First off, you can block sites. So you can block apps, you can block sites if you actually feel like you can't control yourself in that environment. Again, it's just like, this is like, the fact that you asked that question is really frightening for me, because it's like, this is solvable. Like, this isn't like, I didn't need to tell you that answer. And so, like, I think a lot of people are asking questions just because they want like a hug. They want a high five. Like, what do you want me to say here? Do you want me to say, you know what, man? You're right. YouTube's too distracting. You have no chance. So the way your life is right now is how it's always going to be. So, enjoy that. Right? Of course not. It's ridiculous. You got to change to change. And so we just want to maximize the odds. And of course, I mean, you started the premise of like some things you can't eliminate. You started the internet, but then you said YouTube. It's like, that's a straw man, right? Of course, the internet. Yes, okay, eliminate some of the other stuff that you have. But if you really need to, on the internet, it's what are we using the internet for? Is it for research? Do we need it just because we need to process words? Is it we need to type shit? Okay, like what are we actually using the internet for? You might be able to actually work airplane mode if you're actually that worried about it. Like there's always little things that you can do because you might only need it for a specific period of time. I have a timer that I use that's on my desk that I time my tasks with because I know if I have a clock in front of me, my speed of work probably triples. I stay on task when I can see that there's a clock that I'm timing myself, even though there's no jury or judge or executioner to determine whether I did or not. I see that there's a clock and I'm like, I gotta stay on task. That's how I manage myself. I'll give you one more tip, and this is for people who have a little bit of ADD. You can get a work buddy. And so basically if you work better with somebody else, like you actually are both more productive, it's a great way of keeping each other on task. A little pro tip. All right. Another. Go ahead.
I am a software engineer turned entrepreneur. I started a luxury dating app. How would you market a product like this?
You started a luxury dating app. So you want rich people. I mean, it's going to start with billionaires only. Depends on how happy you want to go. There's only 3,000 people in this app, and they're all billionaires, and most of them are married. So it's really just for rich people to have affairs. No, don't do that. You're going to want to start with keystone partners, meaning we want to have big, strong brand associations early, and basically you need to either do it for free or give some sort of incentive for those people. Maybe they get preferential, like mating matching or whatever, that can help them find a better mate, because if they are in the market, then they would want that. And so I think that you basically want to get 50, ish people who are your perfect avatar that have some sort of clout to begin it, right? And then over time, you have the people who are the seeders of the brand, and then everyone else approximates that and says, I want to be like them, or I am like them, I associate them with cool stuff, or I would want to date people like them, and then as a result, I will join your platform. But typically, wealthy people want exclusivity. And so I think somebody's already succeeded at this. It's an app called Raya, or Raya, I don't know how to pronounce it, but R-A-Y-A. I would model what they did, and they've done a really good job at basically being like super famous or super rich people in their own exclusive group. And you have to apply, and it's legit from what I understand, of like a lot of people get denied. But yeah, so basically it should be by application. People should get denied. And you ask for, how do I create an exclusive thing? You have to have something worth joining, which means you have to get those first people. That's what makes people want to join. And you have to keep the bar high so that the people who come in add to the network rather than diluting it. And then wait a long time because it's going to be really hard. All right, next one.
At sugar_mama_23 asks, why can't I get a job? I have a master's.
Oh, that is the entire question. Because you think that the fact that you have a master's somehow requires a business to give you a job. That would be where I'd start. If I could remake education, I would have the master's degrees only apply to departments that they would be in, because you probably want to get a master's in order to get a job. If you want to get a job, you will work inside of a department. And so are we working in marketing? Are we working in sales? Are we working in customer success? Are we working in tech? Are we working in finance? Are we working in legal? Like, where are we working? What department are we working in? And that would make, if you want to get into private market, as in capital, normal, privately owned businesses, then you want to be able to describe how what you learned will help the business make more money. And so, again, I would encourage, like, if you have a master's, whatever, you might be able to get on the interview, but that's not going to get you the job. And so, of course, there's interviewing skills, but I so strongly encourage anyone who is looking for a job to be able to clearly articulate what they do and how it interacts with the metrics that a business wants to drive. That's it. If you can describe that, you will set yourself apart from many other candidates, and you will be more likely to get roles that are meaningful. What other wild-ass questions do we have here?
I'm good in tech. I've worked and interned with big Fortune 500 global companies. I'm just having analysis paralysis of starting my own business, since this tech market is actually so bad. What to do?
Okay. Trying to pick from the entire universe of shit, very, very impossible. Trying to pick between two things, much easier. So we need to take all of this and make it small. How do we make it small? We have to add filters, right? If you're looking at 1,200 products on a Shopify page, right, what are you gonna do? You're not gonna look at all 1,200, it would take you way too long and it would be overwhelming. So you say, okay, well, I want this size, I want this color, I want something that's a top, I want it to have straps, and all of a sudden you have 13 items to pick from, right? And so you want to take the same approach to figuring out what possibility you want to go in. And then when you have the 13 there in front of you, at some point you just got to roll the dice, you got to jump, right? And I think that it is very important for you to understand that just like you have a quote analysis paralysis in order to pick a business, at every single step in entrepreneurship, there will be multiple options in front of you that you would be able to take in order to solve a problem, and no one is going to tell you whether you did it right or not until after it has happened. And so if said differently, if it takes you more time to make the decision than it would take you to just do the decision and find out, then you should just do the decision and find out, and then you will know. Wonderful answer.
You mentioned you think Chick-fil-A has one of the best business models. What would you tweak in their model to improve their revenue?
I mean, honestly, I would just look at what Raising Cane's doing. I would take what they have and just limit the menu even more, probably. That's probably it. I mean, they already have. I mean, they're probably one of the most successful, brands of all time. Like how do you mess with something that's worked so well? Yeah, I mean that's probably the only thing I would consider doing. Is maybe I'd limit the menu a little bit more, make it a little bit easier. For the staff to get trained up, have fewer decisions for a customer to make, as Raising Cane's has proven and has just destroyed. That's about it. Otherwise, I mean, big fan of Chick-fil-A. Good book, by the way. Wealth, Is It Worth It by S. Truett Cathy. His story of Chick-fil-A. Little read.
Do you think Gen Z are still competent enough for business or reliable workers?
I think there are humans that are reliable, independent of age. Right. And so this idea of like Gen Alpha, Gen Z, Gen W, Gen X, whatever, who cares? You have people and there's stuff that needs to get done and people who have skills in order to do it. I put very little weight in terms of generations. I think these are also labels that we apply to blocks of years arbitrarily. I'm actually a Gen Z millennial hybrid. Okay, it's not like you're a werewolf vampire hybrid with split DNA. It's like you've got a mom named Mary and a dad named David, and you went to school just like everyone else did, and some technology changed in the meantime, and you either had the skills to learn the technology or you didn't. I don't think the basic drives of human have gone away. I've met some absolute savages who are Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and I've met some absolute duds, and that goes all the way up. I'll actually say this. This generation doesn't want to work as hard. This generation has it so easy. Well, what the fuck did you think was going to happen if our whole goal was to make it better for the next generation? We wanted to make it better and wanted to make it easier than we had it. Right? And so if we actually accomplish that objective, then it means that there's going to have less hardship for someone to go through. Isn't that the fucking point? Right? And so in either way, either you make the argument that maybe they did get softer, and whose fault is that? Ours. And if they didn't get softer, which again, there are spikes. If we're looking at generalities, maybe. But I think it's more so that they just work differently than they work not as hard. I think it's more likely they just don't want to work hard for you. It's like saying there's no good girls out there. It's like there's tons of good girls out there. There just probably aren't good girls out there that want to date you. So let's look inwards, because that we can control. All right, what else do we have? What other preguntas do we have? What other Qs need potential As? I have no promise of As, to be clear. Disclaimer. No As are promised, only Qs. And spicy takes.
We got a comment saying your Spanish is especially good today.
Ah! Molto grazie. That's Italian. Muchas gracias. All right. That was Spanish with an Italian accent. Mario. Okay, let's rip.
Thanks for your answer on Chick-fil-A. I'm listening to this while in a Raising Cane's drive-thru, LOL.
Cooking with oil. That's what we were doing. We're cooking with beef fat or chicken fat. I don't know what they cook with. Probably corn oil. Probably a canola. It's Crisco, is it? Bro. Dude, they are filthy. All right, let's go.
Hey Alex, I'm trying to get into content production, but I have no skills I could make videos about. So I'm stuck trying to be entertaining / funny like you, which is tough and makes doing volume tough. Any thoughts?
What was the first part?
Hey Alex, I'm trying to get into content production, but I have no skills I could make videos about. So I'm stuck trying.
Okay, so you're saying you're not good at stuff and you want to make content. So either you have to do a volume of content. Let me zoom out for a second. Good content gives people a return on their time. All right, so it happens in one of two ways. Either they get a return on their time in that they would have been bored and now they are entertained, version one, so they're distracted by your content. The second way is they get a return on their time in that they could have tried to figure out how to code a thing, but then your tutorial saves them time. And so in either situation, people want a return. And so for you, if you have no evidence that you were good at the thing, then you want to do a lot of work and then show the work that you did and then demonstrate your learnings from that work. So for example, if I wanted to say, hey, I made 100 pieces of content, here's what I learned from it. Make 100 pieces of content that suck. Of those 100 pieces of content that suck, one of them will be suck the least. Of that one that sucked the least, you can then make a video about that one that sucked the least and what you learned from it. And so fundamentally, there's always an iterative process that we can apply that still makes what you have interesting. And so this is the concept of documenting what you're doing. But I would encourage you also to do a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily recorded and then talk about the lessons that you learned in those actions. So if you do 100 cold calls, day one of doing 100 cold calls, and then you do a time lapse, and then at the end of doing 100 cold calls, you describe what you learned from those 100 cold calls, I'll bet you that series would probably be pretty fucking good. And if you do 100 days of cold calling 100 times a day, and you do those 100 pieces of content, I will bet you that by day 100, you will probably be in a pretty good spot, right? Both your content will have improved, and you'll probably be better at cold calling. And so there's always a meta that can be applied. When you don't have skill, you can always demonstrate the effort and the lessons that you learn in real time that still give someone a return on a short that took you 5 hours. All right.
How would you build a powerful personal brand as someone striving to reach peak physical form before a possible third heart transplant in the next 1 to 2 years?
Those seem not to be apparent conflicts. So it's like, I want to reach peak physical form and I want to build a personal brand. I mean, you could build a brand around how you're achieving peak physical form before your third heart transplant and maybe avoid the third heart transplant. I don't know. Third heart transplant? What are we kidding me? Hold on. Third? I didn't even know that even the more than two. I didn't even know one. One's a lot. Two's a lot. Two's a lot. Three's insane. Bro, I mean, there's content right there. Jeez. 3? What'd you do to the first 2? Whatever you're doing is not working. Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, I would make content around how you're trying to, shoot, make the third one a keeper. Holy cannoli. And hopefully this is giving you a laugh. I heard laughter is good for the heart. Studies, science. That's right, take it home. The more you know. All right, what's the next one? We're cooking today. We're getting spicy. All right, what do we got?
For the 18-year-olds whose loved ones don't share their vision, how do you really bring them along instead of losing them for that period in your life?
I think some of this is words, which are really important, meaning bring them along versus losing them. I think that catastrophizes the reality of the situation. Fundamentally, they will disagree with the actions that you're taking. I think that if you are still polite and still respectful, and then you choose to live your own life because you're an adult, I think that you will also gain some respect from them for at least pursuing your own path rather than trying to do whatever they're telling you to do. And so you will bring them along. You don't need to say, fuck you for not believing in me. You can just say, hey, I'm gonna do this, love your support, and if you don't wanna support what I'm doing, please at least support me. And if they don't wanna at least support you, then maybe you have a slower and less frequent communication cycle with them.
Am I doomed? I don't...
You might be doomed. But basically, you gotta do shit that's gonna get you what you want. And if they disagree with you, be respectful to them. If they want to disrespect you and decrease the likelihood of you hitting your goals, then I would say you can distance for yourself for a period. Distancing is, again, an amorphous word. Just means don't contact as much, don't see as much, don't respond for as long. And then in the event that, once you become successful by your means, if that means that they're going to talk to you then, you'll then have to deal with the fact that they didn't want to talk to you in the meantime, and that's kind of tough. And so I would encourage you to quote bring them along. And I think the way you do that is you just don't necessarily need to talk about that stuff. That's a non-therapist answer, which is like, if there's 20 topics we can talk about and one of them we get in a fight about, just talk with the other 19. Practical non-therapy advice from Alex. All right, let's do the next one.
Am I doomed? I don't have skills but can't get a job to learn because no companies are hiring fresh graduates right now.
No companies on Earth? Whoa, that's crazy. I guess the fresh graduates that we hired, I guess we don't exist. I guess we are not a company. I think that the statements that you're making are absolute because you have not succeeded as quickly as you wanted and then are extrapolating the fact that it is impossible. But here's the good news, is that if it's hard for you, it's hard for other people. And if you have more or higher frustration tolerance, meaning that you can tolerate difficult shit longer and you can get punched in the face more, then the pool of people that you were competing against as time goes on narrows because other people have fallen out because they've given up hope. And so, yes, I think that you can absolutely negate inferior odds with superior volume of work. And so if your acceptance rate, let's say into a company is 1% likelihood, then you need to apply to 100 places. Now, to be clear, you just submitting a resume, not putting a cover letter, not taking any outreach, not trying to talk to somebody at that place from a cold call, cold outreach, cold email to show that you're putting the extra work in, that will dramatically increase the odds of success. But if you're doing none of those things, to make it work, then you should expect that you're going to have inferior outcomes. And so the big highlight here though is stop saying that no companies are hiring freshmen. They're probably just not hiring people who are not putting all of the work in for enough time period to meet the needs of the business. And you need to go above and beyond to break out of the mold. So if everyone else is not putting a cover letter, you put a cover letter. If everyone else is not reaching out or trying to find somebody else who works at the company to just say hey, can you at least give me an interview? Then that's the extra work that you do to make it more likely that you're going to win. And by the way, that never stops. Following the process is important, and also going above and beyond. And that's going to happen for customers, it's going to happen for business owners, that never ends. All right, thorough.
So I'm a fresh graduate that just got a job, and I just started a new SDR
Wait.
job / cold calling. Can you give me some tips, please?
Wait, there's a freshman who got a job? There was a company that hired a freshman? What? That's impossible because no companies are doing it. No companies, that's broke the laws of physics. Crazy. All right, so you're a fresh SDR and you started on the call floor. By the way, there's a job. Maybe they're not hiring for the job that you're applying for, as a side note. But just about if you're I can't get a job, try doing door knocking. Try door knocking and selling solar. They'll take you. They'll take you in, and if you go close sales, they'll pay you. Of course there's jobs. If you need to take a job that has higher risk, then take a job that has higher risk, because right now you're not getting paid anything anyways, right? Might as well learn some skills and maybe get paid a lot. Anyways, I digress. So SDR, I'll give you the same exact advice that I gave Jacob, who was my 15-year-old neighbor, when he started as an SDR at Gym Launch. I said, number one, find the number one guy on the team and sit next to him and listen to everything that he does, and then do everything that he's doing and just do twice the volume. That's it. I said, just do whatever the number one guy does and just double it. So you'll get the feedback and iteration loops in terms of skills of the right way to do things by modeling success. And then because that person is better than you can't just do the same amount of work as there, because then they're advancing faster than you, or at least they have more skill and they're doing a lot of reps so that you'll never be able to catch them. So this is like Kobe doing 2 days or 3 days when everyone else is doing 1 a day, right? You can't catch up if you're doing the same amount of work. You got to do more work to catch up. And you have to work like you are coming from behind, because you are. That one had smoke on it. That one cooked a little bit. That had some sizzle. All right, let's do another question, another cue.
your wife in your life. Do you think having your wife in your life has been essential to the massive success you've achieved? Mine changed my life.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, I think I would have been successful financially without Layla because I was successful financially without Layla before. I think the degree of success and the speed of the success, I can't play out another life, but Layla absolutely. The longer we have been in business together, the more I think the success. I would not have achieved the level of success that we have at this rate. I'll give you two very tactical reasons why. Actually, give you three. Number one, Layla's decision making, paired with my kind of ideation, has been the combination that has made everything work. And I think that in a lot of ways, she makes more decisions than I do in the business on a daily basis. And some of the decisions that she makes, I would not have made, and her decisions were better. And so I would say, from number one, she has helped me avoid many calamitous mistakes that would have probably set me back many years. Number two, Layla is exceptional at managing and leading people, and that is probably a larger deficiency for me than it is for her. And so we would not have been able to attract the level of talent that was required to pursue the level of opportunity that we're going after today. If it had been just me. I think that, because I also don't think I would have had the level of track record to attract that level of talent either. And so if you look at the company, like I would say the company is by and large more loyal to Layla than they are to me, because Layla is the one who actually like leads like the company from a day-to-day perspective internally. I think the third reason, and this is one that will probably surprise a lot of you, is that Layla, I think, actually has bigger aspirations and dreams than I do. And I had material goals that I wanted to hit, and I would say that in the short term, I was more motivated to hit those goals than she was. But in the long term, as we've surpassed those goals, like beyond needing money for anything else, her desire to make an impact and her desire to, more importantly, build an environment that people love to work in has been a greater contributor to our continued growth, and I would say like pushing and striving to do more. And so I think those are the three reasons why I would not have had the level of success that we have had if I had done it alone, or it would not have happened on this fast of a timetable. Elegant. Well said. Giving myself feedback. All right. Let's get weird. Let's get a weird one. We got a weird one? See if we can find a weird one. Oh, they're nodding. So this one's going to be the wind up in the pitch. All right, let's hear it. Are aliens real?
How TF?
All right, go ahead.
How TF do I get a house? I know you will answer, why do you want a house? And yeah, I want one.
So interesting, because the assumption that you had about my response is to question your desire. I think it's good to question our own desires, but less productive to question someone else's, right? That being said, you want what you want. So if you want a house, you want a house. I would say it is probably valuable to break apart the underlying needs that you're trying to satisfy. Is it a status thing for you? Is it because you want shelter? Is it you want an investment? What is it that you want? Is it because you want a nest for your family? Whatever it is. That being said, the question that you ask is a financial question of like, how do I save up the amount of money to make a down payment on a home? And then how do I make the monthly payment going on thereafter? Which then reverses to how do I make a certain amount of money? And how do I save a certain amount of money? And so the saving comes from not spending and making more than that for an extended period of time. And I think the rest of my content covers how to make money. So I think the house is actually kind of a placeholder for an income and saving goal, which if you want an income goal, do more shit that makes money and spend less of it when you make it. And I know that's probably not the answer you wanted, but also what answer would you be looking for? It just comes down to money. So, what other do we have? I wasn't going to get into political nature of home ownership in this environment. You guys digging this? This is our, what is it, day 5 of our day 30 for 30 or something like that? Anyone ever watch, was it E30 for 30? Was that a ESPN? Yeah, I used to watch that. I think it was Tuesday nights was 30 for 30. It was. No? Maybe it was Wednesdays? I used to watch that when I was in the fraternity back in the day, and I would drink beers and pregame watching 30 for 30. Just as a fun, the more you know about back in the day, Alex. All right, what other ones we got? These are fun. This is good. All right, what else we got?
Solo founder of e-com business, gained traction with Muslims quickly, but is on pre-order and self-funded. Religiously, anything tied to interest, loans, or excessive debt is no-go. Best way to scale?
So the scaling is actually a rate issue. So as long as you're making sufficient profit with the business, then you should be able to reinvest the profit that you are making into new and additional inventory. The difficulty is just if you, let's say you 10x in 1 month, just hypothetically, you would not be able to have sufficient cash flow from the last month's, call it profit of sales, unless your profit was, insane, which is probably unlikely. So you ask a math question, which is that what is the rate of growth that you can cash flow? And what you need to do is basically control your sales to control growth if you truly have that kind of like product market fit, so that you could say, okay, let's say that our net free cash per month is, whatever, 20% of our revenue. It's like, right, so the max we can grow, and let's say that our buying more inventory takes 3 months to materialize. We basically have to plan for 12 weeks out. We can have 20% growth in 12 weeks, and then that becomes our kind of model for how we need to grow. But it is solvable. If the question is, do you put yourself at a disadvantage? The answer is yes, sort of. Because if you wanted to, you could raise money, right? So that's not debt. It has no interest. You could just sell a portion of your company. I'm sure investing is probably allowed. And you sell a portion of your company, and then that capital goes into the business so that you can buy more inventory. And so then you have a partner. And maybe that partner is distribution, or they have cash, or they have help, or whatever. And so there are for sure other ways. And so this, by the way, is very common for a business that has a lot of capital expenditure. Not to say that e-commerce is one of them. It is a business that does require capital to scale. But there are other businesses that require capital to scale. And typically in those businesses, people bring on investors so they can get additional cash so they can pull the future forward. Like, for example, if you're like, I want to build $1 billion, beverage dispensary, right? It's a very capital intensive business. And let's say that you have one beverage dispensary right now and you do $10 million top line and $2 million of profit. There's nothing wrong with that business. And let's say that each new market, you're guaranteed to make that money, but it costs you $8 million to start one, right? So that'd be a 25% return on invested capital, which is not terrible. It's not great, but it's okay. But that would mean that every 4 years, you'd be able to, I guess 5 with taxes if you had a C Corp, you'd be able to start a new location. And that means that, and then after that, your rate would double. And then after that, your rate would double. But it just means that it takes time. So the only way that you can get around that is that you would raise capital so that you could open up 10 in that first year. And then you basically do the arbitrage on how much is the time of my life worth so that I can trade percentages of my future earnings for more earnings today. That's the trade.
Hey Alex, serious question. I fell into a business as a psychic giving advice. I'm making enough to live, but I feel bad because I don't actually have psychic powers. Is this okay?
I had it fully loaded to be like, well, you should know the answer to this question. But at least she admitted it, right? At least she admitted it. If you're looking for a rationalization, I don't even want to give you a rationalization. But I'll say this. No, I won't say this. I think that it is very likely that you have other skills that have allowed you to make this business that you could advertise and sell ethically by not deceiving your customers. And so the first rule of business and marketing for us is state the facts and tell the truth. And I think that what you probably are pretty good at is just like life coaching and therapy. And I think if you did that rather than say that there's mysticism behind it and you have psychic powers, you'd probably be able to help. Like, I'm assuming that your customers are okay, like as in that they are happy with the services. But what you feel bad about is that you are lying. And so I would discourage you from lying, but I would encourage you to help customers. And so just state the facts and tell the truth about what you're actually doing. And I'll bet you, if you told the customers that you have right now, or clients that you have right now, some of them might be turned off. But I think if you just said, listen, sometimes I just tell you what I think, and sometimes I don't think it's psychic. Are you okay with that? Great. And then every time you're like, I don't think it's psychic at all. I think I'm just helping you out, and you good with that? And sometimes the answer is just yes. And some people will say no, and that's okay. You'll find other customers that are okay with just that. And in that transition, you'll have gone from being an unethical business owner to an ethical business owner, and great, you have done it. So the TLDR is, you have some skills that are making customers happy. All we need to do is state the facts and tell the truth about what those skills really are, and then just advertise that. And then you won't have this issue, and I'll bet you'll grow a lot faster because you won't be holding yourself back because you won't feel bad about it. That was a tricky one. A little minefield right there. All right, what else? What else you guys got? Let's get some fastballs, or a curveball perhaps. Maybe a spit-based knuckleball. You guys having fun in this office get up? This is it for those of you guys who are joining. If you're like, oh look, this is it. This is the $1 billion office, right? I don't have fancy lights, or actually really pretty harsh lights. But yeah, this is where I work every day. These are all my books. Those are things I'm very proud of. I spent a lot of my life writing, and I keep them around because they make me feel good because I know how much work I put into them. Which, by the way, if you haven't read the books, fucking read the books. They're free. All right, they're free on the internet. If you want hard copies, you can get them, but they're free. Just Google it. All right, what do we got?
If Neuralink was proven enough and good enough, would you put a Neuralink chip in your brain to become super Hormozi?
Yeah. I mean, the premise that you started with, is it proven? Is it safe? Because then you ask the question, would I take an advantage versus not taking an advantage that's safe? That sounds like asking, will someone take a risk-free upside? And so to me, it's fine. Maybe in the future, like, we'll find out that it is not exactly risk-free and that there are more significant trades. But yeah, I'm all for personal growth of all kind.
What is the weirdest business/business model you ever saw that was actually huge? What are the weirdest businesses out there but work tremendously?
I don't even want to say it because it was so good that I don't want to blow the business owner up because he paid me a lot of money for help, and so I'm not going to. But there are some fucking wild businesses out there that absolutely print money. All right, there's so many. I mean, shoot, I met a guy yesterday who sells luxury doors. Like, how do you get into that business? Another guy yesterday does tree removal, just stumps and stuff, just removing trees. Makes millions of dollars a year. The door guy, millions of dollars a year. Like, I've seen guys who sell fasteners, millions of dollars a year. Like, everything that you look around, like you look around this room, everything that you see, there's a business behind it. And even within that, there's multiple businesses. Like, there's a paint company, there's painters, there's people who do drywall, right? There's a e-commerce company that does this wallpaper, whiteboard thing. There's a company that does folders, right? There's a printing company. There's a company that sells the ink to the printing company. There's a company that sells the raw paper materials to the company that does the print. There's a binding company. There's a third-party logistics company that that bind and ship, right, that stuff to an end location. There's a company that installs cabinets. There's a company that gives them the base wood. There's a company that gives the glue that glues this like cover of the wood on it. Like, all you have to do is use your eyes. There's business everywhere. Interesting one though. I really want to tell you the one that was wild. I'll just say it was sexual health. And yeah, I'll give you the vague answer. So sexual health, and it was a specific subpopulation that needed some medication, and the guy got some sort of licenses to administer this medication, and he was getting several thousand per year to administer the medication, I think like monthly or something like that, to the customers. And so he had something like 80% net margins doing like $30 million a year out of one brick and mortar store. Like, absolutely printing, 3,000 square feet, like 10 employees, crush it. So like there are, I mean, I've seen, dick enhancement doctors that are making, $30 million a year selling dick pumps that are surgical, that are $100,000, that, add girth and length. Like, it's just, there are so many businesses. I'm just thinking about those because they're weird because they're sexual health, but like, there's so many different things. There's so many different ways to make money. Like, the big rule is just state the facts and tell the truth. Like, don't not be psychic and claim you're psychic. Now, to be clear, if you're buying from psychic on some level, like, all right, maybe you might need a psychic check too, right? But like, My team's behind me. They're like, dude, what are you doing? They're like, this is why we have to edit so much. This is why we have to censor. I know. This is why we can't have nice things. All right. Rip it. Let's do another weird one.
Hey Alex, I inherited my dad's weapons manufacturing company, got kidnapped by a terrorist group, had a literal change of heart, long story, and came back wanting to pivot the entire business away from weapons, against my board's wishes, while wearing a metal suit to work most days. How do you convince stakeholders to let you kill your most profitable product line for something unproven?
What? Does anyone else think that was absolutely insane? I mean, I guess the question is, why do we need to kill the proven thing? Can't we just take profits and then reinvest it in the new thing and then try it out? I mean, it sounds like you need to make a bet. Do you need to bet the entire company? Probably not. If I was a stakeholder, I'd be like, hey, let's keep making profit and then we can try this other thing out. That's okay. It's really rare that you truly need to bet the entire company. If you have a superior thing, it doesn't mean the other thing is, like, just because something is inferior, another product is inferior, or a business model or revenue line is inferior, doesn't mean that it's not productive. And so said differently, if I have something that gets me 4-to-1 and then I find something else that gets me 10-to-1, I should try and do 4-to-1 and 10-to-1, right? Now, if the 10-to-1 opportunity requires all of the resources of 4-to-1, we have to put something called a risk-adjusted return, which is that it's 10-to-1 we think, but it's not proven. And so it's like, what is our success likelihood? Is it 20%? Is it 50%? And so we have to be really realistic. And so, of course, there are business use cases or studies that have been done where, Kodak, didn't make the jump, or Blockbuster didn't make the jump to, streaming and whatnot. So there are those stories, and we love to tell them because they are so rare. But far more often, people kill good businesses because they get bored and have a shiny object idea that they think is better. But if this is a business that you inherited from your father, then I'm going to guess that you didn't build this business based on what you just said, which means that you probably don't have the knack right off the bat for knowing exactly how the market is, because you weren't the one who built it. Let's be real for a second. Like, you didn't build this thing. And so to say that you know better than the board, who's probably been there for a long time, like, of course, there's the situation where, like, the board's out of touch, blah, 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 but, like, you also have to show some respect to the amount of reps and experience and time that they have spent while you were just a child building this business. And so I think that what you need to do is just, like, give them evidence and then make an appropriate size bet. And if they don't believe you at all, then you can start your own company and do it your way. This is also still the most absurd story. That is probably the most absurd question that I've ever gotten.
It was the plot to Iron Man.
Was it? Jesus Christ. I was like, that is the most absurd plot. That is, like, the most absurd thing I've ever heard. Fuck. Actually kind of funny when you think about movie plots as Q&A questions like that. That was insane. Yeah, I'm the only one. Yeah, I missed that one. Just like I'm fucking taking these questions seriously. All right, I'm trying to actually answer these, and I'm getting fucking trolled. No, it was great. That was solid. Okay, what else we got? All right, so friends, family, countrymen, lend me your ears. I hope this was an amazing 3430, and I will see you in the next daily live stream. Stay awesome. Bye.